this will be the shorter of the two, so you can relax. I just want to say to you, thank you for having us. It has been good to be here, and I thought your words there, David, were really appropriate, really helpful, and just want to say there's a lot of joy in parenting. Also, it hit me, boy, it's a little heavy maybe, but there's been a lot of joy in the journey. Singing together is one of those things, and we all do things as families that we really enjoy. All of you have those things, and there's a tremendous amount of joy in family living. And so I don't want us to miss that. Like, it's not all just heavy and discipline. There's a lot of joy, and I don't know if I said that well enough, but that is how we've experienced it. At the end, we're to have a bit of a Q&A. I'm not offended if there are no questions. I get how personal this stuff can be, but you're welcome to ask a question about something that I've said or clarification, and then I'll turn it over to Scott. The years from conception to age 6 is incredibly important years of a child's life. These years are the foundation from which a child lives their life. Of course, the ages 6 to 12 sort of solidifies those first 6 years, and by the time a child is 18, they have been mostly formed. God's at work, and there's lots of change that can happen, but the truth is we've been formed by the time we become an adult. I want to remind us that the nurture of a child begins at the age of 0. Research has shown the development of a child, and not just physical development, begins in the womb. An unborn child hears his mother speak and sing. See, this baby is more than just a physical being. This baby has a spirit, a soul, a mind. So I want us to think a little bit about some things we can do with our families that will bless, ultimately. I want to end with 2 things that the culture has pushed around on us and might be changing our minds. I want to just remind us of a few truths there. And so how can we nurture our children? And I'm just going to dive right in again, and I just want to say something here I mentioned before. I think families should read often and much to their children. Children love stories. And children who love stories tend to read stories. And children who read are far ahead developmentally throughout their growing up years. If your children read, they are given a huge gift. I know I'm a teacher. I'm sorry. I couldn't help but say that, but that's where I needed to start. Because it's so important. We don't say that school is the only place you learn. We say school is a place to help us get started learning, because you're going to spend the rest of your life doing that. School is actually real life. Okay? You're going to roll from that? I mean, I have students here who are preachers in this church. They are constantly learning, I promise you. And so hopefully those years in school are helping them today. You see, it needs to be this way. But when you have readers, you've got leaders. But read good books that have stood the test of time. If all we have on our shelves are Berenstain Bears, go ahead and get rid of about 80% of those and replace it with something better. If you need ideas, there's going to be lots of people in this church that have good ideas for you. Miss Bethany back there can help you with good books to read. There is power in learning to love to read. And moms, you have a huge impact here with your children. So, nurture children by reading to them. Secondly, sing with your children. In this particular era we live in, we are more consumers than producers. Spotify, CDs, those are those round things, young people. They actually put them in a thing, and then it goes round and round, and it plays music, just to make sure you know how that works. I won't even talk about cassette tapes. But music can quickly become something we consume, but we don't produce. And so it is so nice to have good singing groups available to listen to, but fewer and fewer families actually sing together then. And I encourage us to just work on that. Music and singing helps a child develop in all areas of life, actually. So moms, when you're washing dishes, go ahead and sing. Okay? It's okay. I can hear my mom in the background when I think about this singing, Lord, I am fondly, earnestly longing. I mean, she's just singing. Okay? Singing. It's really good for the development of a child. Nurture your family by learning to sing. Thirdly, make your home a place of learning. So I already said, children will spend the rest of their lives learning. They were built that way. God made children this way, made adults this way. He made, in other words, people to always be learning. So teach them simple things like to count, and when you're preparing a meal, moms, get your children to help you and ask them about the measurements and how all this works. And when you're driving, ask your children what animals they see and what sounds they make, and count the signs beside the road. And in other words, teach your children along the way, like Deuteronomy 6 says. Go ahead and just make your home an environment of robust learning, new things, stuff. I read today that. Did you hear that? Glenn just told me recently that. Share things. Make learning a part of your home. Learning should be celebrated. Learning new things should be breathtaking. Make learning a habit and a lifestyle. That's my encouragement. Because that is the way we're going to grow in our Christian walk. Right? So we don't do school just for the sake of getting smart. That's a poor reason. We educate toward faithfulness. And that has to do with a learning mindset. Make your home a place of learning. A lot more we could say. Fourthly, I will say almost nothing about this because if I get started, I won't be able to stop. So, severely limit screen time for children. That's a whole session. And so I'm not going there. Can I just say that, and is that good enough? Severely limit screen time for children. Medically, biologically, neurologically, limit screen time. And we could talk about the spiritual aspects. I'm not even talking about that. Just from a science and medical perspective, severely limit screen time for children. Allow your children to fail. Now, there's some areas of life that are different today, and David, you referred to this a little earlier here. Times have changed, and I'm not trying to get us stuck in the good old days. I think the good old days are right now. Those days back then were good, and they're old. But they're not necessarily good old days either. I mean, we can pine for that, but the truth is, I don't, frankly, really want to go back there, truthfully. And most of you probably don't either. I mean, when you stop and think, well, life was so much simpler. Well, it was in a sense, but if you went back there, you'd find the same problems we have today. So let's not pine for the good old days. Let's think about what we have in front of us. That said, things change. They've always been changing. They change faster now than they ever did historically. But we can embrace that and say things are different, but there's two areas that I want to talk about. One is this is a negative one, and it's allow your children to fail. Children today seem unable to fail. The need to feel special, to believe they are winners, has kind of caught hold, and parents then assume that we can't let children fail because then they're not winners. Parents are increasingly concerned that their children feel good enough about themselves. It is true that children need a correct self-view. Good self-esteem develops when caring adults identify children's strengths, but also allows them the satisfaction of trying something and messing it up. Tim Elmore talks about it like this: as parents, we've given children lots of possessions, but not much perspective. As teachers, we've given them plenty of schools, but not plenty of skills. As employers, we've mentored them in profit and loss, but haven't shown them how to profit from loss. And the shift appears to have started quite some time ago, more than, well, quite a long time ago, about 40 years ago, in the Tylenol scare of 1982, if you're ancient enough here to remember those good old days, which isn't really that great, actually. There was bottles of Tylenol that had been poisoned, and they removed Tylenol in mass from drugstore shelves because there was this poison thing going on. In the years following this incident, it seemed like we became hyper-aware of children. In many ways, this is actually good. But follow me what happened. By the 90s, we had determined to boost self-esteem and ensure that kids grew up confident and comfortable in a very uncertain world. And so public schools initiated many self-esteem programs. I went to public school my first 8 years, and yes, I remember self-esteem programs. I did those. It's a rah-rah, pat yourself on the back. We are quality people. We are children who have potential. And it's really worked on my self-esteem. I needed no help in self-esteem. I needed to come down a notch or two, is just the honest truth. But that's not what they were doing. And the idea was, well, children are pretty free. We got to really build them up. We installed diaper changing stations in public restrooms at this time. Baby on board signs in minivans led to bumper stickers in the early 2000s that read, "My kid is a super kid," or "My kid is an honor roll, my kid made the honor roll." And then we decided that, well, we should give children a head start in everything. So we thought that good parenting meant we should probably use baby Einstein and baby Mozart with our young children. So we play the right kind of music and it will give them a better chance. This is true. I'm not actually making it up. You give them a better chance. Now, I'm for giving our children every chance we can get. Understand me? But follow what's actually going on here. There was a tremendous pressure on schools to let children into first grade below the age of their policy. And that has, by the way, continued. The biggest pinch point and pain point for me as a school administrator is parents wanting their lovely, wonderful, brilliant, intellectually superior child to come to first grade a year before it's time. And I say, you want your child with your mama. As a parent, you should want them with your mama as long as possible. They have so much to learn from mama. And there's plenty of time to learn to read and all those things later. I don't know if hardly a year goes by that people aren't asking for exceptions to our policy. I am for promoting a proper self-view, for keeping children safe, for applauding participation, and providing a good start in life for children. But in the meantime, I think we've tended to give our children a false sense of reality. We seem to have highly confident children that aren't necessarily well prepared for life, because many children never experience setbacks anymore. In the past, when a student got in trouble or failed a class, parents reinforced the teacher's grade, insisted their children just study harder. You got to work on this, young man, young lady. Today, parents often side with their children, and the teacher gets in trouble. That's a shift, folks. We have a lot more hovering parents. I'm all for parents' involvement. I am 100% for that. But hovering? We have a parent who texts a bus driver 2 to 3 times on the morning route to let the bus driver know exactly where the child will be and what time it left the house and where the child should be at such a time, and then did you actually pick him up? He's 11. He's got this. He's got to walk two blocks. It's fine. Okay? Relax a little bit. Relax. You see, as mom and dads, we make our children into trophies, and it's easy to do that. I'm a dad too. Our children are often seen as reflections of our own success. or failure. And our child is a winner, so we look better, and then there's no messiness to deal with, right? How does life actually work, though? None of us wants to see discouraged children, but just not failing is not a solution. Perhaps the best motivation for a student is to face reality squarely. What young people need is adults who believe in children and then provide the accountability and the structure until they do. See, our children aren't that fragile, actually. We talk to them a lot about gun safety or safe driving, and we should, but children don't learn common sense by watching and listening to others talk about it. Children do need some experiences. They have to actually get behind the wheel a little bit and drive. It can sometimes we take away the difficult to try to make it easy for students, but this only ends up being prolonged adolescence. Homes that allow children to fail and learn from their mistakes give their children a real gift. Billy was just such a boy at home. He was a social misfit. He never could have many friends. He wasn't well connected to students at all. He went all the way through high school, didn't have many friends, just a misfit. And he went to college, and he was so awkward there, and he actually ended up leaving college then. But all the while, his parents, I understand, said, it's okay if you try and don't make it, but you better keep trying. You've got to keep working. You've got to keep trying. You don't stop. They made it okay to fail. And I'll just mention that we benefit immensely from Bill Gates' success following all his failures as a young man. It's okay to fail. Our children are important to us, but they're not fragile. Okay? They're fragile in the sense they're people, they're humans, but they're not fragile in the sense that they can't make a mistake and learn from it. Let's not treat our children that way. And then finally, create a culture of service rather than happiness. We have 5 children. I have a daughter-in-law, a grandbaby, and I want every one of them to be happy, right? Like, people being happy is just, it's a good feeling. When people are happy, I feel happy. And we want to offer this, the best life possible, and we should. But happiness is not the goal. Happiness is a byproduct of wise choices. Happiness is a byproduct of doing what is right and adding value to others. True satisfaction comes from serving others, not themselves. Tim Elmore writes that the things have changed and shifted in our culture here. He says that as parents, we want the approval of young people because they represent what is cool and relevant. And we adults desperately want to be relevant too. As parents, we have fewer and fewer guiding principles. Many of today's parents were raised when principled living was fading or old-fashioned, so we're just making it up as we go. Elmore continues to say, as parents, we feel a little messed up ourselves, so we believe we have no moral authority to ask our children to do what's right and to put down a line. We feel like we have to say, do as I say, not as I do. Wow, you resonate with any of that, though? There has been a shift, hasn't there? We want happiness. We more and more believe that material wealth and career goals and bigger houses and better cars and bigger paychecks, the whole American dream thing is really where it's at. But the truth is that happiness is largely dependent on how we react to or perceive outside events. Out of our direct control. We don't have control of all the events that happen to us. But happiness has to do with how we react to what goes on around us. It isn't about warm, fuzzy feelings. It's how we react. Todd was in 2nd grade, And his class couldn't have a Valentine's Day party because they're behind their schoolwork. Teacher said, nope, we can't have a Valentine's party because we're behind. We got to make up time. Too many snow days, and so we got to keep working. So Todd said, I want to exchange Valentine cards with my friends. Now, Todd was, again, one of these little misfits, didn't have many friends. And his mom knew that he would never get any cards in return. But Todd insisted on making a card for every single student in his class. He took them to school on Valentine's Day, and his mom, her heart just kind of dropped out when she saw him go to the bus. And she's like, oh, it's terrible. I mean, what's this going to feel like? At the end of the day, Todd's mom watched him walk up the driveway from the bus stop, and as he entered the door, he's talking to himself. Not one, not one, not one. Her worst fears had come to pass. Todd hadn't gotten one card. So she asked him about his day, and she braced herself, and she was thinking about how she could comfort this little boy. And Todd said, Mom, today was great. I didn't forget one classmate, not one. I gave a card to every one of my friends. Happiness is a matter of perspective. There's a lot of life that's this way. And we do well in our homes to foster that culture of service rather than making happiness the primary economic driver of the home, the primary way things get done. Parents easily fear that unhappy children are a poor reflection of them, so the adults in their lives, this is more than just parents, will tend to shelter children and reward them quickly and easily and repeatedly, and so young people begin to believe they are amazing. Young people, you're amazing, but you're not that amazing. The problem is that children late in adolescence begin to figure out they weren't as great as they thought they were. Too many are told they are excellent and wonderful without working hard, and the praise starts to ring hollow when they get a little bit older. And their first real failure for a majority of young people, according to Tim Elmore, happens from the ages of 17 to 24, which is sad. Elmore writes that we must communicate two sets of messages to children during the first 20 years of their lives. The message you should send children 0 to 10 is, you are loved. You are unique. You have gifts. You are safe and you are valuable. Children should understand that to be reality when in 0 to 10 is what Tim Elmore writes. When they hit age 11 and the years 11 to 20, then we say, life is difficult. You are not in control. You are not that important. You are going to die, and your life is not about you. I've thought about this for about 10 years now. I think this is pretty accurate. Children need the security and safety and the love of a parent who believes in them. But there comes a point when they have to understand how hard life actually is and the fact that we aren't here forever. There's something bigger about us than ourselves. There's a story, the kingdom story. And one day, you are going to die. In other words, we don't owe our children happiness. We owe them perspective. We prepare them to be disciplined adults who understand what real fulfillment looks like. We create an environment in which children strive for the approval of their parents rather than parents seeking the approval of their children. So here's some practical ways to create a culture of service in your home. Help them practice the hard work of doing something over and over until you're really good at it. So one of the ways we did that in our home was they had to practice piano, whether or not they wanted to. There's lots of things you can do, but I'm just telling you, it's not easy to learn an instrument. And this thing of doing it all the time, spending enough time, it is hard. Practice is excellent. Children you'll create a culture of service in your home when they hear the word no. They don't need buddies, they need dads, they need moms. They need authority in their life. That's one way to actually get a culture of service going, that I'm not the end game. I'm not the center. And thirdly, they need to learn to wait. Children don't want to delay gratification. If I'm hungry, I want a cookie now. And I mean, I wanted it actually 3 minutes ago, but I'm willing to do it now. But I need it now. Let's have at it. Children need to learn to wait. Well, it's almost time for supper. We're not going to give you a cookie because it's time for supper in 30 minutes. And then you'll have plenty to eat. Oh, and then it's terrible, right? Part of a culture of service has to do with learning to wait and then learn to serve. If children don't learn to serve, they become an entitled generation. Entitlement's a problem. I deserve this. I need more. I don't have enough. You can't do this to me. What about all of my friends? No one else has to do this. Not true. Okay? By the way, children, your mom and dad know that's never true. That no one else, that's never true. Or actually 99.8% of the time is not true. It's not true. So we already got you on that one. It just depends if they give in to you maybe. I'm telling you, they know better. You see, the goal is young people who can serve, not young people who are happy. Because when you serve, you become happy. You actually get what you're wanting when you learn to serve. There are cultural forces looking to take our children's allegiances and their loves and to make them part of the world. We need to think about the sacrifice that it takes to raise children to serve. It's a compelling contrast when young people are happy because they're serving. One of the things I'll just point out is that if you've heard people say that aren't Anabaptist, they will say things like, y'all are different. What's different about you? Well, I'll say this. It's not just about the clothes. It's not nearly as big a deal to them as it is to you. People from other faiths think there's a lot of value in a disciplined church and things like that. They see that's no big deal. What they see is something different in the attitude, the mentality, how people can actually work together to get something done, how we can submit to each other. What makes us different is because we believe in a community brotherhood. And you have to give up your will to others, Gelassenheit and yieldedness. That is where it's at. And it is hard work. And what we want to do is take the shortcut. And we want the byproduct. We want that, wow, you all are different, without paying the price to get there. And there is a price tag. It's a steep one. And it is so worth it. It's interesting, as people have moved in our community, are moving away, there's a bit of a movement away from the Anabaptist tradition. What I find interesting is they're desperate to keep their children in our school. Think about that for a minute. What's going on? And I'm not saying we're the only, you understand where I'm coming from, I hope. But hear me now. What's going on? You can't have it both ways. If we short circuit what it takes to have a service-oriented lovers and worshipers of God, we'll not get what we're shooting for. You'll have to do the hard work of ourselves, giving in, giving up, doing the hard thing. To raise children, Rod Dreher said, and I quote, who become adults with the moral strength to resist the defilements of the age requires an extraordinary degree of sacrifice from parents. Even then, there are no guarantees. But what choice do we have to surrender our children's hearts and minds? Flannery O'Connor said, and I quote, push back against the age as hard as it pushes against you. What people don't realize is how much religion costs. They think faith is a big electric blanket, when of course it is the cross. Nurturing children starts early. And as you nurture your children, God bless you. You have an incredible opportunity to shape a generation for Jesus. And so we remain vigilant. We work at consistency. We give attention to our children in our homes so that we can raise up warriors. Warriors of God's. Who can then, as Psalm 78 says, train their children. Who will then train their children? Who will train their children? Read Psalm 78 this afternoon and think about the fact that the training of children has to do with great-grandchildren, not with your own children. We have the long look. We look out and we say, what kind of great-grandchildren do I look for? What am I hoping for? What are our values? What do we believe? What do we need to pass on to my great-grandchildren? And what will it do? What will I have to do today to try to get there by the grace of God? Yes, people make decisions. We can't control all of that. I beg you to make it important. How we raise our children. It has import. Folks, talk to each other. Don't do it by yourself. Talk to each other. Ask questions. Help each other down this path of nurturing a generation that loves Jesus and his church. Could I just pray for you? Then we'll go to a Q&A. Lord, I just ask that you would put your hand on every parent here. Thank you for their faithfulness, the way they want such good things. Help them get there. Give them ideas and discernment. Help them understand what's happening. Help them keep the big picture in mind. And I pray that this church could produce an incredible army of your warriors that could bring the kingdom to bear here in Bourbon. May you give each one what they need to train and nurture young people for you. In Jesus' name, amen. Do you have a question, maybe a pushback, whatever you'd like to say here? This is not an altar call, so okay, Scott.